But here's the hidden cost. When you're praised for being intelligent, what people are usually praising isn't hard work. It's effortless success. You were praised when you solved the problem quickly, when you got an A without trying, when you understood something the first time. What if I told you that what you've always considered your greatest gift might be exactly what's sabotaging your life? If you seek to understand the invisible patterns that might be limited, subscribe to this channel and leave your like. That quick click helps us a lot. Now think about the times when someone looked at you with that expression of admiration and said, "Wow, you're so intelligent." As if you had something special, as if you were different, better. And how that made you feel. Chosen. Special. As if you had discovered your identity. But what if that identity was, in fact, an invisible prison? On the outside, everything seems fine. You're that person others seek out when they need answers. You solve complex problems. You have insights that no one else has. People expect great things from you. They always have. But inside, there's a dissonance you can barely explain. A feeling of always being on the margin of your own life. As if you were an observer, not a participant. You see others diving into experiences, making mistakes, growing, connecting, while you watch from afar, analyzing everything, but rarely feeling anything. In your most honest moments, you ask yourself, why does everyone else seem to know how to live, while I only know how to think? And this feeling of disconnection only grows with time, as if there were an invisible wall between you and the rest of the world. A wall built with brilliant ideas, insightful analyses, and intelligent observations. But that somehow keeps you trapped on the inside. And it turns out there's a reason for this, a reason few are willing to face. At some point, perhaps so early that you don't even remember, your identity completely merged with the idea intelligent. You didn't just have intelligence, you became intelligence. It wasn't something you possessed, and this wasn't your fault. How could it be? You were just a child, absorbing the messages that the world around you transmitted, building your sense of worth based on the feedback you received. Think about it. What exactly did people praise in you? It wasn't effort. It wasn't dedication. It wasn't persistence in the face of difficulty. You were praised for picking things up quickly, for being a natural learner, for not needing to study like others, for solving everything instantly, for understanding complex concepts as if by magic. The praise wasn't for hard work, but for effortless success, for making it look easy. And this planted a dangerous seed in your subconscious, a belief that still governs your life today without you realizing it. If I'm intelligent, things should come naturally to me. If something requires effort, it means maybe I'm not as intelligent as I thought. And so, paradoxically, the very praise for your ability ended up limiting how much you were willing to try. Because effort not only seemed unnecessary, it seemed like a threat to your most fundamental identity. And this isn't just a theory or a casual observation. There's solid science behind this. Dr. Carol Dweck, psychologist and researcher at Stanford, spent decades studying exactly this phenomenon. In her revolutionary research on mindset, she discovered something deeply revealing. When we praise a child's intelligence, "You're so smart," instead of their effort, "You worked really hard on this," we create what she calls a fixed mindset. Fixed mindset is the deep belief that our qualities, like intelligence or talent, are fixed and immutable traits. Characteristics you simply have or don't have. Gifts you're born with, not skills you develop. And here's the crucial point. In controlled experiments, Dweck discovered that children praised for their intelligence quickly became risk-averse. They chose easier tasks to maintain their image as intelligent. When confronted with real challenges, they gave up more quickly. And perhaps most revealing, they lied about their results to appear more competent. Doesn't this perfectly describe the pattern you've been living? And this is how the trap closes completely around you. Because the moment you encounter something you can't master immediately, a challenging project, a new field of study, a complex relationship, you don't see it as a growth opportunity. You feel it as an existential threat to your most fundamental idea. The internal logic is relentless. If I'm having difficulty with this, maybe I'm not as intelligent as I thought. And if I'm not that intelligent, then who am I? It's as if the ground were disappearing. The identity you built throughout your entire life, the source of your worth and recognition, suddenly seems fragile, vulnerable, about to shatter. So, what do? You protect yourself. You start systematically avoiding any situation where your performance might not be immediately exceptional. You procrastinate until the pressure is so great that you have a ready excuse. I could have done better if I'd had more time. You choose to stay in your intellectual comfort zone, where your identity remains safe, where you continue being the intelligent one. You avoid genuine risks, true bets, leaps of faith that could lead to real growth. And so, slowly, your life becomes increasingly smaller. But the cost isn't just personal or professional. It's deeply social. You withdraw from situations where you might appear in. You don't take the dance class because you'd be the worst in the class. You don't participate in the group project because you don't want to carry anyone on your. You don't learn that new hobby because you don't have time to be amateur at something. And without realizing it, you start becoming increasingly marginalized from social life. Because real social life happens precisely in these spaces of shared vulnerability, joint learning, growth through trial and error. To compensate for this growing isolation, you do what you've always done. You use your intelligence. But now, instead of solving math problems, you solve people. You analyze them, observe patterns, develop theories about their behaviors. You understand people conceptually, but rarely connect with them emotionally. You have what psychologists call cognitive empathy, the ability to intellectually understand what others feel, but very little effective empathy, the ability to actually feel alongside them. It's like observing life through glass. You see everything with impressive clarity, but you can't touch, feel, participate. And this feeling of separation only deepens with time. And then, when the pain of loneliness becomes too intense, when isolation begins to weigh like a stone in your chest, your brain activates a final and powerful defense mechanism. You start convincing yourself that this separation is, in fact, a form of superiority. I don't connect with people because they can't keep up with my reasoning. I don't have many friends because people today are superficial, and I seek depth. I'm not understood because I'm ahead of my time. I'm like a lone wolf. I don't need validation from the herd. And so, the narrative completely inverts. What was a painful wound transforms into a badge of honor. What was a limitation becomes a sign of distinction. Loneliness is no longer something you suffer, but something you choose, because you're different, special, above average. It's a brilliant psychological inversion, and it's also a prison. Because this arrogance isn't genuine. It's not based on a real assessment of your worth relative to others. It's defensive arrogance, a shield your ego desperately raises to protect you from the most painful truth, that you feel profoundly disconnected, that you don't know how to belong, that you were left behind in the flow of real life while clinging to your identity as an intelligent person. And the saddest part is that, deep down, you know this. In moments of quiet, when defenses drop, you feel the emptiness. You recognize the loneliness. You realize you traded genuine connection for an illusion of superiority. And secretly, you wonder if it's already too late to change. This is the last and most insidious consequence of fixed mindset. You build a fortress around your identity that, while protecting it, also isolates it from everything that could make it grow, expand, and truly flourish. But here's the truth you need to hear. It's not too late. It's never too late. And there's a way out of this prison you built yourself. So, how do we break this deeply rooted pattern? How do we escape this prison built with praise and expectations? The answer is simple to understand, but profoundly challenging to implement. The first step, and this is non-negotiable, is that you need to abandon the identity of intelligent child. You need to let this story go. Let this resonate for a moment. The identity you've carried for decades, the source of your pride, the pillar of your personal worth. You need to be willing to release it. Not because it's false, you probably are really intelligent, but because it has become too small to contain who you really are. It's like a cocoon. It was vital for your development at a certain point, but now it's preventing you from spreading your wing. And no matter how comfortable or familiar that cocoon might seem, it has become a limitation, not protection. This moment of letting go is scary. It feels like a leap into darkness. It feels like the death of something precious. But in reality, it's the birth of something much greater. And here's the transformation that needs to happen. You need to move your identity from being to becoming. This doesn't mean that being intelligent is bad or that you should deny your abilities. It means that basing your worth on a fixed trait is inherently limiting and ultimately toxic to your growth. The solution, as Carol Dweck demonstrated in her research, is to develop what she calls a growth mindset. The deep belief that your qualities can be cultivated through your efforts. Instead of building your identity around being intelligent, you build it around being willing to grow. Instead of defining yourself by what you already know, you define yourself by your willingness to learn what you don't yet know. This shift seems subtle, but it's revolutionary, because it completely transforms the questions you ask yourself. From, will this make me look intelligent? To, will this help me grow? From, what if I fail? To, what can I learn if I try? From, how can I prove my worth? To, how can I expand my capacity? Suddenly, challenge is no longer a threat to your identity. It's the very nutrient that feeds your new sense of self. Difficulty is no longer a sign of inadequacy, but an invitation to growth. Failure is no longer a sentence about who you are, but valuable information about where you can improve. And most importantly, other people stop being an audience evaluating your performance or competitors threatening your status. They become journey companions, each with their own struggles, their own insights, their own unique contributions to offer. But how do you make this transition in practice? How do you move from fixed mindset to growth mindset? How do you rebuild this identity you've carried for so long? The answer lies in a word that has probably always scared you: vulnerability. You need to start doing exactly what your identity as an intelligent person always taught you to avoid. Risk appearing incompetent. Allow yourself to be a beginner. Embrace the discomfort of not knowing. This means, concretely, choose to learn something something where you have no natural advantage. Maybe a musical instrument, a foreign language, a martial art. Something where you will inevitably be a clumsy beginner. And then, commit to staying in this uncomfortable space of incompetence long enough to start improving. Ask questions when you don't know the answer. Not those elaborate questions designed to show how much you already know. Genuine, simple, honest questions. I didn't understand this. Can you explain again? I've never done this before. How does it work? Where can I learn more about this? Share your mistakes and failures with trusted people, not as self-deprecating jokes or stories where you're the hero in the end, but as real experiences of vulnerability and learning. Notice when you're avoiding challenges out of fear of appearing incompetent, and then consciously choose to do exactly what you're. Start showing up in life's spaces not to impress, not to win, not to prove your worth, but simply to participate, to learn, to connect. Because true human connection rarely happens between perfect facades. It flourishes in the vulnerable space where we reveal our imperfections, our struggles, our doubts, and discover we're not alone in them. And when you start practicing this vulnerability, something extraordinary will happen. Slowly, but with growing certainty, you'll begin to feel something you may not have truly felt in years. Genuine connection. Not the superficial connection that comes from being admired from a distance. Not the false sense of belonging that comes from being the intelligent one, but the deep and authentic connection that's born when we allow ourselves to be truly seen, with our strengths and weaknesses, our knowledge and our ignorance, our certainties and our doubts. And this connection won't come because you conquered it with your intelligence or earned it with your performance. It will come because you finally were willing to step down from the isolated pedestal where your identity as an intelligent person placed you, and enter the messy, imperfect, and wonderfully real world where the rest of people live. And it turns out this world isn't as bad as you feared. In fact, it's the only place where you can be truly seen, truly known, truly loved, not for your intelligence, but for your complete humanity. Because here's the liberating truth. You don't need to be the smartest person in the room to belong in it. You don't need to have all the answers to be valuable. You don't need to be extraordinary to be worthy of love and connection. You just need to be someone willing to show up, even when it's difficult. Someone willing to try, even when it's scary. Someone willing to fail, learn, and try again. In the end, the solution to the intelligent child paradox isn't in finding more sophisticated ways to prove your intellectual worth. It's in rediscovering something much more fundamental, something you may have forgotten along the way. You just need to allow yourself to be human, and maybe that's the most intelligent way to live. If these words resonated with you, subscribe to this channel. Share this video with someone who might be trapped in the same intelligence trap. Give your like to this video. This helps YouTube recommend it to more people to hear this message. Sometimes, the message we most need to hear is the one that gives us permission to be imperfect. See you in the next video.